Everybody says that reptiles are too expensive to buy. The prices just keep climbing. But what if I told you there are 5 reptiles you can still buy for under 10 bucks? $10 reptiles seem crazy. Most reptiles are gonna be around 100 bucks or a little bit more. These ones you can still buy for under 10 bucks. Now there's a disclaimer here. You're gonna notice a common theme. You're probably gonna wanna buy more expensive reptiles than these ones, but these ones are truly $10. There truly are 5 of them, and they truly do make good pets. So let's just get into it. Number 5. Anoles. The big disclaimer or caveat to all of these species that we're going to talk about, actually 3 of the 5, is that they're wild caught. I would recommend always buy an animal that was produced in captivity versus one that is wild caught. However, if you go to a reptile store or a pet store, which I don't recommend buying things at PetSmart and Petco, you're gonna be able to find anoles for about 10 bucks. You could find them for about 5 bucks 10 years ago, then in 5 years from now, they're probably gonna be 15 bucks. And the reason is you can find them all over the place. They're not endangered, they're overwhelming, and they're in a lot of places now where they shouldn't be. So people collect them and then they sell them. The problem with wild caught animals is they're full of parasites. So if you can find a captive born one, even if it's $25 or $30, I recommend that. But why would you want one in the first place? The reason that you'd want a green anole is because they're pretty and they're nice to look at and they're fun to watch and they actually have social structures and they're going to be social with each other. You can keep a bunch of them together, obviously doing your research on how to do this. Don't just go tossing a bunch of animals in the same enclosure all willy-nilly or anything like that. But they actually behave much differently when there's more than one of them in an enclosure. Not the greatest handling species, but we will talk about some you can handle on this list too. Number 4, this one might be a shocker if you do your shopping at big brand pet stores, ball pythons. Now, I want everything on this list to be reasonable to find for $10, not something that, I found one time in 1987 and I'm still talking about it. No. For real, I've bought ball pythons for $5 on several occasions, more times than I can count. Generally, it's always from a private sale. So someone I find on Kijiji, which is the Canadian version of Craigslist, if you didn't know. So for $5, I've received several ball pythons for $5 each. Generally, it's because somebody is trying to sell off a collection. They have a normal looking ball python that has no genetics that are of any monetary worth to them if they're doing a breeding project, or they're just getting rid of all their animals and liquidating at the cheapest price possible. And because there are so many normal ball pythons, a lot of the times they're just free. I've seen rescues literally handing them out before, or breeders handing them out as well. So no, you're not gonna find a $10 ball python in a shop that needs to, keep the lights on and pay rent and advertise. You're gonna find it as a private sale. Ball pythons, I could talk forever about why they're amazing. I mean, it's the perfect snake if you want something that's docile, not gonna move around super fast, is easy to keep. They're kind of the perfect snake for a lot of people, although there are lots of better snakes, as I talked about in a video right here. And if you're looking for a place to buy reptiles like this at the best prices, it's got to be Palm Street. Not only is it more fun than just going to a random marketplace or a regular marketplace and then this is the price and then you buy it and whatever. It's a community. It's a real community with no bots. There's no gatekeeping. You log on to one of these auctions. You get to talk with the person who's auctioning off the item real time. So if you have questions about the animal, let's say it's a crested gecko, for example, which will be a little bit more than 10 bucks, of course, but just as an example, and you want to know if it has any hets or, what the lineage is, you can ask that person in real time. They'll answer your question. And then you bid on the animal. And if at the end you're the highest bidder, that means that you win. You guys know how auctions work. This one's just way more fun than any of the other auctions that I've ever done for anything else. I got to hang out with the Palm Street crew at the Tinley Expo a couple weeks ago. Holy cow, these guys get it. They love animals and plants, of course. You can buy plants on Palm Street. They understand the ethics of selling and buying animals, which is so important and so overlooked, especially with cheaper animals that might be throwaway animals. Palm Street doesn't subscribe to this, they're cheap, so who cares mentality. Plus, if you're looking where to buy my animals at the end of the year, it's gonna be on Palm Street. I just think it's a better way, it's more interactive with the community, and it's all legit. Palm Street and live auctions are the future of buying and selling reptiles, and I can't wait to show you all the cool stuff that you can buy over on Pond Street. So hit the link below and see what I'm doing on Pond Street. Number 3, let's keep on with the theme of animals that are captive bred and free. Sliders. Red ear sliders, yellow belly sliders, mostly. The reason is, and I touched on this last week, so I'm not gonna harp on it too much, these turtles are difficult to care for. So if you're really looking for an animal that you can really care for and you're going to do the research, get a slider if you want a turtle that's free and you have lots of space, because they do need a bigger enclosure. I'm talking about a 75-gallon enclosure tank, like aquarium, would be bare minimum. I recommend like 100 gallons or maybe even bigger than that. So keep in mind, this is gonna be a cheap pet to buy, free dollars most of the time, but they're not gonna be cheap to set up. However, once you have them set up and you have a big canister filter, if you wanna do a sump or whatever, and your aquarium and all your lighting, and you figured out the chemistry of water, because that's another thing, it's kind of cheap to keep up with them. Your water changes are gonna be essentially free, depending on how much water costs in your area. You put some of the drops in to make the water livable for the turtles. You change the bulbs every once in a while, and then feeding them is really, really cheap. So they're cheap to keep, just expensive to set up, and actually to buy the animal. You can find sliders for 10 bucks all day long. Find one for $50 advertised, and I promise you, you'll be able to talk them down to close to $10. Number 2, Tachydromus. So this is there's a caveat here. We're talking about long-tailed grass lizards. So especially if, in the early 2000s, you went and walked into PetSmarts and saw all the lizards, you definitely saw these. They were really common. They still are. They're Asian grass lizards or long-tailed grass lizards, a lot of people will call them. And Tachydromus is the genus, and within it, there are several different species. So Sex lineatus are the ones that I'm talking about. Those are the really common ones. You can find them for 10 bucks all the time, like really easy and really common. However, you're always gonna find these guys, if they're $10, to be not captive bred. They're wild caught, which comes with a whole bunch of issues. And in general, it's almost always cheaper to buy the $50 captive bred Sex lineatus as opposed to the $10 wild caught one, because the wild caught one's gonna have parasites and might die if you don't know what you're doing, where the captive bred one is way less likely to die. However, they're a fantastic pet. I have some coming in, actually. I'm really excited about it because I think they work good in communal setups. And I've got a big, giant communal setup over there. I know most of you don't have a 1,500-gallon setup, and that's why I like to make videos and show you, because it is, expensive to set up and takes a lot of time and effort. But even if you have a much more modest setup where you want to put anoles, for example, and I don't know, green tree frogs, perhaps, I've seen this setup done forever. For literally decades, people have done this with great success. What I would recommend is maybe one of the other species. The problem here lies the cost is so different. You could buy a Sex lineatus that is captive bred, so the normal ones that I'm talking about, for probably 50 bucks, maybe 75 if, there's really none around at the time, which is kind of rare because they breed prolifically. They breed a ton. There are some other ones. Dorsalis is another one. They're much more green, so I would say they're definitely more beautiful for sure. And people who have them, like my buddy Mike Taitula, for example, Alpha Reptile, he would tell you that they're a much better animal because they're more personable. Is this true, or is it just because the price tag is so high and people work with them? Is it possible that the Sex lineatus at, a fraction of the price, sometimes 10% of the price, could be just as good for handling and looking at and just as personable and have the same behavior, but people don't put the time in because they're a throwaway animal because they're so cheap? I don't know. However, there's a big price difference. I mean, $250 plus. I think the sold one I saw that Mike was selling was like 400 bucks American. So they're definitely really expensive in comparison. So you have to make the call, is the extra good lookingness of them worth 10 times the price? Same sort of thing with emerald tree boas, right? Just to give you a comparison. In my opinion, the basin emerald tree boas, which are $12,000, are beautiful. They're way nicer looking and more handleable than a northern, but a northern you can buy for like 1,200 bucks. So is it worth 10 times the price? For me personally, no. As an investment, sure, but as a pet, not really. Is it the same with these guys? I don't know. I guess we're gonna have to find out. But yes, they're 10 bucks all day long, if you buy the cheap ones that are probably wild caught. And number 1, another lizard from similar part of the world, we're talking about house geckos. Hemidactylus frenatus is what I'm talking about because there's a lot of geckos in the world called house geckos. These are the ones from Southeast Asia. The ones that if you go on vacation to Thailand or Bali are gonna be all over the freaking place. I mean, these things are everywhere. A few years ago, I went with my friend Dave Kaufman to Southeast Asia. We went to Thailand, we went to Indonesia, and these things were literally everywhere. You'd find big tokay geckos, which you can get for kind of close, like maybe not that cheap. Anyway, hanging out on the wall under the light, waiting for these little guys to go after the bugs that are attracted to the light, and then the tokays would eat them while they're trying to eat the bug. It was the coolest thing. The reason they're cool is because they're small and they're not going to be handleable, but they move really fast. They're fun to watch eat. And again, communal setups. Now, I know this whole video seems like, oh, do communal setups. Don't do them if you don't know what you're doing. I'm talking about this is for some people really good. Do tons and tons of research on this, and the idea that I'm going to say it's bad because most people shouldn't do it is stupid. I hate that way of thinking. But again, if you can find one for $25, let's say, that's, you know, captive, I think it's worth it. I think it's just worth it to buy animals that are captive and don't have the parasites and all the issues, come in dehydrated, the whole thing. So also, if you have animals that eat lizards only, Candoya carnata, for example, or I don't know, there's a whole bunch of different snakes I could list that only eat lizards, or you need to get them on rodents and it's taking a while and you need lizards to supplement. These are another great animal because they're so cheap, they breed so prolifically, and they're the perfect size as feeders, which is kind of like took a dark turn, sort of. Whoops. But I want to know from you, what animals have you seen for under 10 bucks, let's say in the last 5 years or so? Since the time you had to work from home, which happy 5-year anniversary, that's crazy. I can't even believe that. My videos looked like this that long ago. Can't believe it's been 5 years. Anyway, let me know in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you don't mind. It's free for you, helps Diamond and I tremendously. And as always, a special thanks to the Patreon supporters. Videos early, discounts on merch, all that and more for as little as $1 a month. And actually, I got a one-on-one right now with the Patreon. So I'll see you in the next one.